Hey everyone, welcome to HR Tech Talks. I am Ben Eubanks, your host. I'm so glad to have you here. It's going to be a great conversation today. It's going to be a ton of fun. I just know it, right? I just know it. I can see that far into the future and I just know it's going to be. So a couple quick announcements just before we dive into this. Welcome to February. The HR Tech Awards contest is underway. The competition, that's program, whatever you like to call it. hrtechawards.org. If you're a provider in the space and you want to know more about that, feel free to dive into that. Today's conversation, I'm so excited about. I've actually been following JD at GoHire for a while now, just kind of interacting with him online here and there over the years, and finally now have the chance to talk with him live. I'm so excited because it's been a long time coming. And one of the things that we're going to talk about, among other things, are things like conversational recruiting, SMS messaging for interacting with candidates, right? Text reminders, all those kind of fun things. So if you're out there, you're listening in, you're thinking about recruiting, you're thinking about how to solve those problems around recruiting, go ahead, chime in, let us know where you're listening in from, what you're looking forward to. If there's questions, as always, please ask those questions. We'd love to have you involved in the conversation for the next 30 minutes or so as we dive into what's happening in that space. And without any further ado, let's bring JD into the show. Welcome, sir.
Hello. Hey, great to be on, Ben.
Hey, I'm so glad to have you here. Again, I mentioned a minute ago, I realized as we were getting ready for this that I have never talked to you live, I don't think, ever. And so I was like, yes, let's finally make that connection, and we'll do it in a public way. So fun stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great because hopefully we get some great questions and answers and educate everyone.
That is the hope, right? You are one of the people I think of when I think of this space around how to interact with candidates, how to respond to them in a timely manner, how to connect with them via, again, text, and be right there present wherever they are. Before we dive into all the fun, nerdy stuff, take a minute or two, tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Jonathan Duart. I guess I've been in the industry for a long time. I started one of the first 10 job boards in '96 called GoJobs.com back on the old dial-up days. And ever since then, that was like a couple of years out of college. And I've had kind of one mission, which was how do we connect candidates to the right people at the right time? And how do we connect recruiters to the right people at the right time? And over the last 25 years, we've tried this in a whole bunch of different ways. We also put in applicant tracking systems, which also created the big, resume black hole. But I came back in and created a new company called GoHire, because I think we have ultimately found a way to get rid of the black hole and solve the problem I was trying to solve 25 years ago, which is engagement at a level that's scalable.
So one of those things I want to hear from you, we were chatting again, everybody, before we come on live, here's the preview behind the scenes. We actually connect and we talk a little bit. We get kind of make sure everybody's plugged in, all the audio's working, all those fun things. And one of the things that JD was telling me was some really interesting things about virtual job fairs. And we haven't talked about virtual job fairs really here on the show. So talk about actually what a virtual job fair is for those that have never experienced one as a candidate or as a recruiter, and then talk about some of the things you're seeing that are some best practices around getting candidates excited and showing up for those.
Yeah. Okay. So virtual job fair, especially, it really took off in the COVID days. Well, we've done video interviews and whatnot for a couple of years now, and that's really been taking off and had a lot of success. But because in on-site interviews, we've had to curtail that. But also we have a remote workforce, and we could foresee that happening. And we also are, trying to do more with less. There's so many different reasons that virtual job fairs make sense, where you have a video and it could be a cast of characters of the recruiting team. It could be a presentation about the company, and you engage candidates, and it can be through a registration form. You put job postings out to give candidates the ability to come, and if you're trying to hire nurses, tell about what's the culture at your company. A lot of those things, like they could read a job posting, but it's that engagement piece that is going to kind of sway them a little bit more. So we're doing those things now on a lot of virtual job fairs. And one of the things that most companies aren't doing is a lot of the platforms out there, they're great as as far as registering people and then having the functionality be able to show the video and the presentation kind of like Zoom. But one thing they lack, which is the most important part, is engaging the actual candidate. So text messaging, we have found with a couple of our clients is, say somebody registers for an event 2 weeks, and even for like this event, say 2 weeks in advance, and then you want to remind them to show up. Well, typically, if you're sending an email, there's some stat like 40% of the U.S. workforce doesn't even read email more than once a week. So as a notification, email doesn't work. We all know that from recruiting. Now the old playbook was make a phone call and send email, but phone calls people don't answer because of robocalls. So now the question is, how do you get in front of them? And we'll talk about that later. But from a virtual job fair side, what we've done is clients can have 100 people register for a job fair, just to use that as an example. And without a text reminder, they may get a 10% attendance rate. With the text reminder sent the day before and an hour before, so 2 reminders, you could see upwards to 60% response, people showing up for the events. Because it's not about just getting people registered, it's about getting them engaged, and that's the purpose. And so texting, super simple thing to do, but it has just amazing results.
I'm thinking about all the ways we use this in our personal lives, right? My dentist now texts me just a reminder, hey, show up, right? Because there's a cost to them when people schedule and then don't show up, and they're missing a chance there.
It's really funny. I was building a background. I was working on building a background screening company called GoHire, and this is back in 2015 probably, or 2016 early on. And I got that exact same thing, a text message from my dentist about an appointment, and I'm just an entrepreneur. I'm like, wait, hold on a second. You guys are a super small business, 7 people in the company. How are you doing this? What are you doing? Fully scheduled. And that, but besides another conversation that I had with my, I always tell us with this one, but my wife and daughter were having a conversation. My daughter was 12 at the time, I think. So like 4 years ago when we kind of started, was they were kind of having like a heated argument. And my wife says to my 12-year-old daughter at the time, Ella, I told you I sent you all that information via email. And what do you think my daughter responded back? 12-year-old, girl. I don't use email.
Right? I don't.
Exactly. So now she's 16. But that's the generation of our workforce now. It's not email. It's and think about this. Here's the crazy part about text messaging. Every HRIS, HCM, applicant tracking system, CRM is all built on email as a required field for creating an account. So you have the entire HR tech platform has to get modified in the next 5 years in order to communicate with their constituents.
I was going to tee you up a minute ago on something, and you actually just kind of touched on it. So I'm going to give you a chance to come back to that, because when I first heard about using SMS, using text messages and things to interact with candidates, you immediately think, okay, well, I've got to have a big recruiting team. We've got to have dedicated resources. We're going to have a big budget and everything else. And you mentioned, right, we're using it we're seeing it in use in these smaller companies. I know that you serve companies across the spectrum. So talk about that ebb and flow a little bit. Talk the size of companies, what sort of, you don't have to give me dollars on what the investment is, but talk about how easy it is to manage that, even if you have a small recruiting team, for example.
Yeah. So our typical, so texting, you literally can get a $47 account to text instead of using your personal phone, which then gets you into compliance, because then what text messages were sent. So if you're a single recruiter and just need a text, $47, you can probably find other cheaper accounts that are from different companies and stuff. So that's step one. It's not an expensive solution to send out those reminders to get more engagement, but it kind of scales up from there when we talk about recruiting automation and having chatbots or a solution that can pre-screen candidates and do this over what we have a tool called apply by text. So candidate can text in to the company, walk through a set of questions, even knockout questions like, do you have the right to work in the United States? Are you 18? Can you pass a drug screen? Whatever. They're all kind of customizable, but they're also, again, this is another kind of change we're seeing in the recruiting market, is that it used to be that we would ask those questions after a candidate spent 20 minutes, 40 minutes entering a form. But now, again, going back to my mission was, how do we connect them early? If a candidate is not qualified to work at your company, why are you talking to them? Why are you telling them to spend 40 more minutes to enter something into your database and you will never hire them? It doesn't make sense for your corporate brand, especially if they're your employee, if they're a referral or somebody who shops at your store. Why are you putting them through that funnel if it's not going to work out? So if you can save that up front, save the aggravation of the recruiters as well as the candidate, it makes the whole process more efficient. So you can move from this kind of single texting solution to this kind of automated system that even works with multinationals and multiple locations, where you can even at the end of a conversation, after you pre-screen a candidate, send them right into an interview scheduling slot on that particular recruiter's calendar. So lots of different ways to automate things. But I think one of the other things we mentioned, like the the notifications, it's really simple to do. Is you export. This is a good tip for anyone, because it's not about my company, but anyone can do this. Is typically recruiters don't go back into the ATS to engage candidates because it's too cost ineffective. With making phone calls and sending emails, that the playbook has radically changed. So that doesn't work very well anymore. So now, though, if the candidate has already applied at your applicant tracking system, by default, you have what's called compliance ability to send them a text message. So if you exported those candidates, we did a campaign for a client 2 days before New Year's, and I was like, they have one recruiter, and they want to send 1,700 text messages 2 days before New Year's. I'm like, okay, you got to be, you don't really want to send 1,700 text messages, but they didn't know. And I said, you could get 10% candidates responding. You could get 50, but it's 2 days before a vacation, so you may get like 5%. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I'll send it out. 1,700 text messages. She got 865 text message responses.
Golly.
2 days. So there went her holiday and like 3 other staff at the company. But what it did, it filled the recruiting pipeline for 2 months. Yes. One text message. That's it. So we've got so many, especially in COVID times, where we've got so many candidates that came in. It's not they purposely had to ghost you, although some did, but some candidates were ready to start, but they couldn't because something happened, or the situation changed, or hours or shifts or things changed. My suggestion for anyone who's thinking about trying to re-engage and they're having that problem right now is to send a broadcast text message to anyone who's applied in the last year and just say, hey, we're still hiring. If you're still interested, please let me know and we'll restart the process. Yeah. And it's a super simple process, and you might be able to fill your pipeline for 3 months just from people who already know your brand.
I love the immediacy of it, but it's also like a double-edged sword, right? You're giving her the warning. If you send this, you could have, hundreds. You could have tons of people respond back, and then they're waiting for a response, right?
Yeah. So you could scale it back. Like you could say, okay, we've got 1,000 people in the database from the last 6 months. Let's just send 250. That's fine.
That's the question.
See what your result is. Yeah, split test it.
Ask you how would you segment that? If you said, okay, we've got 1,000 people we're going to send this to, we want to send it to 100 at a time. Is it time based? Let's go to the ones that are newer, older. Is it something else? How would you segment that if you were trying to figure out how to do that the most?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll do it with a client. They say, like I had a client this last week who said, okay, here's all of for an employee referral program. Here's employee referral program. Here's all of our employees. Here's their first name, last name, and mobile phone number, and the facility they work in. So let's segment every facility, and then 5 of the facilities are going to get this message, and then the other 7 are going to get this message. So those employees, because they're going to send 2 different referral type bonuses, text messages to. So I imported in. It was a lot of work. I'm not going to joke around, but we imported them into multiple groups because it does take a little time because it was one sheet. But once we get it in, then we send out those campaigns, and the response rate from referrals, again, if you're looking to fill your pipeline, your employees are one of the best solutions, but most employees don't have a company email address, especially if you're talking about hourly employees. I mean, the barista at Starbucks doesn't have a Starbucks email address. So how are you going to engage them in a referral program unless you send them an email? But they're, number one, do you have an email tool that can do it? And then 2, they don't read email. So I'll just tell you right now, don't waste your time. So they're not gonna open that email.
You mentioned split testing a minute ago.
Yeah.
Any insights there, like how to run a split test? And again, I have a little bit of a marketing background. Mm-hmm. You do as well, because we both have run companies, so we think about the marketing side. But for someone who's just a recruiter, you might not have ever done this. Someone who's in HR that also recruits. So.
Yep. Yeah. So let's say we've got 2 facilities that both we're the recruiter, and normally the hiring manager and the facilities are responsible for doing a lot of this work, but we're far behind, and now for the recruiting goals, so now we've got to get involved. Well, if we went into the ATS and we downloaded the candidates, anyone who's applied in the last year from both of those facilities, we could take one message and have, hey, text me back, type of, hey, are you interested? Send me a text back. The other message, we could have a hyperlink and send them to the career site, specifically to the job detail page of that one facility. So 2 different messages about, they're going to have different numbers in them, but you can just see how people respond to the text message. The other thing, just from texting alone, it's critical. No candidate is going to know who you are because they've never seen your phone number when you're texting them. So you've always got to say, hi, I'm Ben from Lighthouse. Here's the situation. So you've got to make it personal, because texting is a personal channel. It's not like email where you just put in first name, even if you do that. And then, thanks, you applied your candidate 1217, 35. This is a real personal solution. So you can implement it, and you can even put in a text message. You can kind of do a mail merge, and you can say, hi, Ben, this is Bob, the recruiter from the company, all mail merged, and then send out the campaign. And then you could see what the results are. We can even give you a kind of a bit.ly link, although we don't use bit.ly, but a shortened link to track how many people go to the career site or wherever we send them.
One of the things you mentioned a minute ago was we might not ask some of these questions until late, knockout questions till late in the process, after we've already pushed the candidate through that meat grinder of an application that we have that we set up. Where in the process have you seen it be most effective? Is it at the very front end? Let's capture your number so we can then remarket to you, even if you don't complete the application. What's that look like? What's the best practice there?
Absolutely. So, over the last, I'd say probably 10 years, we've started moving to these candidate pools with CRMs, and a lot of larger ATSs now have what they call a candidate versus an applicant. An applicant, being the OFCC definition of somebody who applied to a specific job, and a candidate who came by, there wasn't a job ready for them or whatever, and so they're now in this other pool. So one way to connect the dots on these guys is to, once they've come in, you can always send them individual text messages. But what you're really looking to do, and I'll go take one step back. The other process that we also have when we send candidates to our career site is AppCast has a stat that they build out every year I think they do it quarterly, but they see when they post jobs to, say, a job board, say Indeed or Craigslist or any of the thousands of boards, they want to see how many candidates actually complete the application. And on mobile, the numbers are now below 6% on average in the United States. So you essentially buy 100 clicks from Indeed of candidates come into your career site, and only 6 people applied. Well, what happened to the 94? Well, you paid for them.
Yeah,
Now,
they bounce.
and if you were the VP of HR or VP of sales, and you found out that your campaign was failing 96% of the time, you'd probably do something about it. But in HR, it seems that it's been
We just do it
okay.
again next month.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. But I'm not blaming anyone here. It's just we've just never known those stats before. And it's not something truly a recruiter should care about. It should be a director or above conversation about what does your recruiting funnel look like. So different conversation, not, it's something new for people to absorb. But when you get only 6% of the people showing up to your career site, what actually happens, or, completing an application, if you could change that from 6% to 12%, think of how much money you just saved in your recruiting budget. You essentially just doubled the dollars you spent with no cost change. You got twice as many people coming through the funnel because you doubled the conversion rate. Now, when someone comes in via text, 90% of them will complete the process. So we did one of our early pilots was with a client. We were on Taleo. This is back in 2016, and I was like, "Oh my God, we're not integrated in Taleo. This is just not going to work. How are we going to get candidates into Taleo?" But I knew that client had less than 10% conversion rate. So I'm like, all I have to do is be 10%, and we're fine. We actually, 1 out of every 2 candidates who started that chatbot conversation completed an application in a third-party site by just sending them a link. But it's about the conversations. We talk about conversation AI and things like that, and conversations in the chatbot. It's all about the psychology of using this engagement tool, which is new. So I could send a link. So Ben, if you came through a bunch of serious questions, the knockout questions, and I said, "Okay, Ben, everything looks great. Next, I need you to complete an application on our website." You'd be like, "Okay," and that's what we did in one of our first pilots. 20% of the people did. So, but 20%, it doubled the conversion rate. So we won 2x, right? Yeah. I'm like, all right, well, that wasn't even really that great at copy. So I said, let's try this other one. Again, split test the response and said, okay, so that last step, instead of saying, "Hey, Ben, thanks, go fill out this form," I said, "Hey, Ben, everything is great. The next step is I want to introduce you to a recruiter for an interview. But before I can do that, I need you to complete the application." So from a psychological standpoint, you got the carrot. Right? Yeah. Exactly. The candidate knows they're gonna get a call with a recruiter, which they don't ever get, right? Then, but we gave them the carrot and the stick. The carrot is the introduction to the recruiter. The stick is you have to fill out the application. 50% of the people completed the application. There's a 562% return on investment. So again, it's just it's the immediacy, which we all love, right? But and the other thing that's different is, and this is kind of goes back to how texting is coming about, is for employers, typically the recruiters don't look at candidates until they've completed the application. And that worked out for a long time. But now we're in a situation with post-COVID, candidates aren't applying. We have this structural infrastructure that prevents candidates, called the ATS, that prevents candidates completing the application because they're too long on mobile. But we need candidates. And so what many companies are moving to is putting a chatbot up front. So getting a lead like sales, but the lead is pre-screened. and then having the recruiters and hiring managers reach out to those candidates. And then once those candidates are pre-qualified, then send them into the application, or once they're even pre-screened. So they have a call with the candidate if they pass the knockout questions. So we know they're local, they're of age, they can pass the drug screen, they have a certification, whatever that is. There's no reason a recruiter shouldn't be talking to that person. Again, this is hourly volume, totally different for professional type of thing. So I have to
caveat that.
put that box around these things, right? So because no one's recruiting funnel is the exact same as even somebody in the different department on the desk right next to it, or working from home next to you. Totally different funnels. But in these situations where it's about qualified and quantity, but but the resume itself is not critical. Those ones we can get to the hiring managers quicker to pre-screen, then do the application after the fact. So let's remove that big barrier to entry called the application and put it behind the pre-screening questions. And that's what salespeople do. They do the same thing. They don't have people go through a 40-minute pre-qual form in order to sell them something. What they want to do is they want to know, how many employees do you have? How many, so that they want just a couple quick questions, and they're like, okay, yeah, our solution would work for them, so I'm going to give them a call.
That's incredible. I've learned a lot in this conversation. I'm over taking notes and things. You're neck deep in this, and so you go deeper than I do on a daily basis. And it's really intriguing to hear some of the numbers, some of the figures, to hear what kind of ROI is there, because there are times where it feels like it's just a flashy, the next thing, but to see how much of a response you can get, to see how quickly they can turn that around, to see, again, the immediacy, the word we keep using over and over, that's really powerful here. So if someone's listening to this and they're curious about you and the work that GoHire is doing, what's the best way to connect, to learn more, to find out about how you guys work with clients?
Yep. So our website's GoHire.com. Feel free to send me an email at jd@GoHire.com. I'll respond back there too. But I'm pretty easy to find on the web and on LinkedIn, and happy to help you. Even, and I'll tell you right off the bat, if I think that from our market and where we are in the technology, it's something that's viable for your business at the moment. But we work with clients that literally hire 10 people a month to companies that are hiring thousands. So we do a lot of work with even small franchisee operators where they're on a paper and application and converting for the first time ever to some sort of electronic thing. As we're doing with Dunkin' Donuts and Del Tacos and trying to think, Wingstops, lots of different franchisees, healthcare, similar thing. It's if they're mobile, why aren't you engaging with mobile? Mm-hmm. Yep. Awesome.
You're listing all these out. I'm suddenly getting very hungry. Although it's about lunchtime for me here where I am. So that's good timing. So yeah, JD, thank you for the conversation. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us freely. That was insightful, and I really appreciate you spending some time with us. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, everyone. And hopefully it was helpful.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. So thank you to everyone else for hanging out with us for a little bit for HR Tech Talks today. I enjoyed the conversation. And again, hope you did as well. Took some good notes, learned some good things about conversational recruiting, SMS, how to interact with candidates, how to convert them, the people that are showing up to your website, so they don't just bounce off and you lose them all over again. So you get a chance to connect with more people. Really insightful stuff. I can't wait to see you again next week, 11 a.m. Central. We're going to be here for another HR Tech Talks episode, and looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you.